Good afternoon. I'm Sean Yao, and this is One News Now. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III rejects fresh calls for him to resign. This comes after critics suggested that he should leave his post over his poor performance in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. For the details, Greg Gregoria is joining us live from Clark, Pampanga. Greg, what is going on there in Pampanga, and what exactly happened with Secretary Duque?
Yes, Sean, earlier today, Secretary Francisco Duque III answered the issue about the fresh calls regarding his resignation from his post as Secretary of the Department of Health. Addressing the issue at a press conference here in Pampanga, Duque uttered a one-liner response. Let's hear it.
Sinabi ni Pangulo na magstay ka sa DOH pero marami pa ring mga resignation calls laban sa'yo. Ano pong mensahe nyo?
I serve at the pleasure of the President. Maraming salamat po.
Sean, that was Secretary Francisco Duque III at a press conference during the send-off ceremony of Filipino seafarers here in Clark, Pampanga earlier, who are now allowed to go home after the release of their COVID-19 test results. 337 Pinoy seafarers are given, or from Barbados, were given certificates by the Bureau of Quarantine allowing them to go home. This after they tested negative for COVID-19 through RT-PCR. One seafarer, meanwhile, turned out positive, and 7 others are still awaiting results. The COVID-19 patient has been moved to a nearby quarantine facility. Those tested negative were either ferried to the NAIA and Clark for their respective flights. Some are transferred to Manila while waiting for a scheduled trip by sea to their hometowns. Their expenses are shouldered by their manning agency. Authorities say the speedy turnout of the test results may be attributed to the decongestion of labs in Manila and the increased testing capacity of our COVID-19 laboratories, among others. Duque said we now have 41 RT-PCR labs and 13 gene expert labs. There are also more than 100 pending applications of labs for RITM accreditation. As for our current COVID-19 situation, the DOH has reported 22,474 cases in the country so far, 331 of which are fresh cases. IATF members note, however, that our positivity rate is at a low 6 to 7%, suggesting good progress in addressing the pandemic. Sean Anyo adds that there may be areas to be placed under the modified general community quarantine next week, but they promise to look closely on the data so as not to make a mistake on whether to maintain or ease quarantine protocols. Sean?
Yeah, just to clarify, Greg, yesterday what was being said was, by June 15, they will be deciding whether or not to make quarantine stricter, which means to bring us back to ECQ or MECQ, or to make it less strict, which means to move us forward into modified GCQ. So now you're saying that we're leaning more towards MGCQ, or is that still an unsure thing?
Sean, according to Secretary Eduardo Año, that is still pending to the recommendation of the IATF, because tomorrow another meeting will happen to discuss the new recommendation of the TWG that is holding or addressing the data analytics of the cases of COVID-19 here in the country. From that, they will draw their recommendation that they would probably give to the president immediately. So this recommendation would probably contain recommending certain areas in the metro or other areas in Luzon or other parts of the country under MECQ, or whether to maintain GCQ in some areas. Sean?
All right, and thereabouts, I guess before I let you go, just wondering how many more OFWs are waiting there in Clark in the quarantine facilities in and around the area?
Yes, Sean, according to the National Task Force Against COVID-19, there are around 600 OFWs or seafarers who came here over the weekend. Yesterday, the around 200 OFWs were already sent home, while more than 300 were sent home today. Four from the more than 600 tested positive and are currently in the quarantine facilities, while 7 are waiting for their results. Sean?
Yeah, anything else notable from the press conference held there by the IATF? Anyone say anything interesting that piqued your interest?
Well, if there is something that we should look into is the number of testing capacity. Secretary Vince Dizon earlier said that we now have around or more than 40,000 testing capacity of our more than 40 laboratories. But the DOH has been saying that it is still an estimated testing capacity because as of the latest report of the Department of Health, we can still see at around 10,000 actual testing capacity. The DOH has been explaining that the difference between the estimated testing capacity and the actual testing capacity of laboratories is caused by some operational issues like procurement of some supplies that is very vulnerable, that is very important rather in doing testing or COVID-19 testing. Sean?
All right, thanks for all those updates and information. Greg Gregorio joining us live from Clark in Pampanga. And here are other stories we're keeping our eyes on. The World Health Organization says the pandemic is worsening around the world as infections continue to increase in several areas including Africa, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia. Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus urges governments to take active surveillance to ensure that the virus does not rebound, especially during mass gatherings of all kinds. And Google has introduced new features on its map service that will allow users to check crowd sizes at train stations before heading out. According to the tech giant, the transit alerts will be rolled out in the United States, the United Kingdom, in Argentina, France, India, as well as several other countries. And in weather, a low-pressure area has been spotted some 350 kilometers east of Surigao City. Pagasa says the LPA may develop into a tropical depression within the next 48 hours. Residents of eastern Visayas may experience scattered to light to moderate rain, with at times heavy rains later on in the day. For more updates, follow News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World Online. I'm Sean Yao, and we are One News.